So good morning, everyone. So I walked in and I saw they have these cards, right? And I said, okay, there's feedback after the presentation, but I thought we can have real-time feedback. So if I'm doing really bad, you can give me a yellow card. Or if I'm doing horrible, red card and I'll step down. So feel free to use those anytime. Anyway, I'm Jonathan Wisler. I was actually the first European employee of SoftLayer, which is now an IBM company. And we were acquired by IBM about 3 years ago. So now I'm managing the platform enterprise sales for IBM Cloud Unit. So with that, I'll kick off on what we think the future generation of cloud is, and then how to get started today. So many of you work in IT, executive or technology, and this is a lot what it feels like today. The cloud is now a requirement. People are saying, do you speak it? We need it. But often the response looks like this. So they ask for cloud, and then we have all these different cloud applications. So you have your CRM cloud here, you have your public cloud there, you have maybe some infrastructure as a service, but they're all more application driven, and oftentimes we don't see a real cloud strategy. And then what's the driver behind that? This is what IDC calls the third platform. So after the acquisition by IBM, someone that had been in IT for decades, he came to me and said, this cloud thing it reminded him of the shift from mainframe to PC. So it's a fundamental shift in how IT is working, and companies are going to be, fortunes will be made, fortunes will be lost. But there was no question in his mind that this is a major transformation, much like moving from a mainframe and dumb terminal to the PC and LAN. Now we're in a world where you have a cloud application, you have literally billions of applications, social mobility. You still have PC and legacy systems, but it's a fundamental shift in how IT is operating. And then the demands by the end users are different. We've all been now trained on iPhones, and we want to get things quickly. It has to be up and running. We're moving away from the legacy environment where IT is hard to manage and slow. So real quick, when you look at that and on one side you say, okay, we need cloud, and on the other side, what's happening is you have lots of different applications and there's not a cohesive strategy. So with IBM, we have cloud advisors. We can work with you on a strategy. And just real quick, we can generalize where the market looks like. Right now, most enterprises and most companies have what they call systems of record. So it's the SAP systems, Oracle systems, things that are managing your ledgers. It's more the back end, what we call back office type environments. And then you have systems of engagements. So all the web-based things, mobile, where you're interacting with your customers, the CRM, those are all the pieces. And then you have public cloud. So people are moving infrastructure as a service with some applications into a public cloud. So these are the main components. And when we look at a cloud strategy, you want to tie all those together. And if you want to take it to the next level, the next generation cloud, it's all linking it together and using the data, right? So it's not just a cloud system that is these pieces, but it's an integrated cloud system, and you can leverage the data that sits on top of that. Whether that's end user data to know where your customers are purchasing and tie that back into your systems of record, or even things where we have a company, a customer of ours, where they can predict the use on SSD drives, and they can predict before one fails, and they can swap out the drive before it crashes. So there's all kinds of things you can use. And then if you look at the next generation cloud, it's all about cognitive. So using APIs, using things like Watson AI to do predictive behavior. So it's tying all the data together, and it's not just data, not just systems and files, but really pulling it together and creating business intelligence in the cloud. That's what we see. That's a very simple strategy. But the recommendation is, rather than building separate, distinct applications or separate, distinct workloads, really develop a cloud strategy, because the next generation cloud is going to be tied together with data, and it will be cognitive. So let's look at some of the drivers under there. Some of the main drivers are, I've been doing cloud for about 4 years. I've been a customer of cloud for even longer. It started as a cost, right? So people were saying, okay, my IT utilization rate is low. How do I reduce my costs and only pay for what I use? Now we're seeing more and more it's about innovation. So it's not just saying, okay, I want to reduce costs, but I need to develop products much faster. I need to enable my teams to develop much faster, and you can do that with cloud. And in the end, we're doing all that to create business value, right? We want to grow our company. We want to create companies. In the end, that's what we're doing to make things bigger and better. So let's dive into that. So let's talk about the cost. So this was a report. They were saying that about 30% of servers just sit idle. And then you can look, there's a link on here with the Uptime Institute, and they did a test, and some 40% of servers in some data centers, no one even uses those. So the utilization rate we have on hardware and data centers is really bad, right? And the estimate here is that was $30 billion US in servers just sitting idle. It's an incredible amount. So what can cloud do for that? We call it a right size IT. So if you look at the chart here on the left side, you have the blue line is the actual user demand. You know, and this can be a web where this fluctuates by hours. It can be something like a capital requirements for an investment bank where you do the calculations on HPC once a quarter. But these are things that the demand fluctuates. That's typical with IT, whether it's a game or an enterprise system. And then the IT, this black dotted line is typically that's how you build. You overestimate and you build towards a peak load, and then you're wasting money. So the utilization rate is low. Or if you under develop, then you're losing customers, you're losing time. So that was the old IT model, that you had a choice how you lose money. Either you underinvest and then you're not getting you're losing customers, or you're losing productivity with your employees, or you overinvest and then you have capital just sitting there not being used. But right size IT is elastic. So with the cloud, you can flex up and down, and you can even do this automatically. So you can be sleeping and your servers are scaling up, and then more importantly from a cost perspective, scaling down when you don't need them. So that's right size IT, and that's what cloud can deliver for you. And then the other part is the goal of that is to optimize utilization rates. So we saw before that something like 30% of servers aren't even used. So they're just sitting there idle. So if you take right size IT, you can optimize these rates. So instead of having a 30-40% utilization rate, if you can double that to a 60% utilization rate, then you've actually doubled your return on capital. And if it's a large enterprise, these are significant amounts. And how would you do that? So we call it the hybrid cloud, right? So you have on-premises IT, those systems of record or legacy systems or applications, and there may be no reason you want to move those off your premises. They work, they're fine, they're in a dedicated stack, but maybe you want to move your test and development on those into a private off-premises cloud. Extend your network into an off-premises private location. That's what we call a private, dedicated, and local cloud. And then maybe you need really flexible workloads for a day or an hour or a week, and you can run those in a public cloud. But it's pulling all those together to optimize your utilization rates. Anyone heard of the Z Cloud? Anyone heard of a company called Zynga? They're a gaming company. So they had peaks and valleys, but at one time they were the largest social gaming company in the market. And they were saying that their database hits were sometimes per hour larger than if everyone in the city of Paris was hitting their database at the same time. So, but they were a free-to-play game on Facebook and other social networks, so their margins were razor thin. So this was about 6 years ago. They developed this thing called the Z Cloud running on Citrix Zen. So what they did, they were spending too much money in a public cloud provider. They moved and did an on-premises private cloud, and they took their on-premise utilization rates from like 30% to 80%, so a huge investment, huge savings on the investment. And then their hourly and daily peaks, they connected that through a network, and the same hypervisor layer, they could scale up and down by the hour. So their utilization rates went from 30% to 80% on huge volume. So that's the model. When we saw that, this was some time ago, we said, okay, that's it. That's the hybrid cloud. That's the model we want to work towards. I'm from SoftLayer, which is now part of IBM. I'm a cloud provider, so obviously we say, oh, everything should run in the cloud. But realistically, we don't think that's the right architecture. So let's talk a little bit. Let's go into the details. So also when you talk about virtual servers, they're available quickly, so you can get them in minutes. You can auto-scale them up and down. So they're very useful for a lot of flexible workloads, web applications, monitoring things, even HPC, you can use these. But often what we see is they're a lot like taking the metro. You know, it'd be like if we were all in this room sharing this Mac, if everyone kind of hits it at the same time. So you get delays on the network, you get delays on the hypervisor, or delays on the server, so on the motherboard. So basically you'll hit this thing and it's unreliable. And at Software IBM, we have a thing called the bare metal cloud, that's the difference between taking the metro and having full control over your environment. You get a lot more throughput and a lot more performance. And so those were the marketing pictures. But this is what it looks like on an actual test, running some applications on operations per second. So the one on the top is a virtual machine in a public environment. So it's a shared hypervisor, or a shared machine in a public hypervisor. So you see the performance varies a lot. It's a lot like the metro, where it can be very crowded or uncrowded, but the reliability is not consistent. And the test below is on a bare metal server. And you see that the performance is a lot in a tighter cluster, so a lot more predictable in a very tight range. And if you look at the average performance, you know, it's almost 60, 70% more. So another way to look at that from a cost perspective is you get more performance, more control, more throughput at a lower cost. So a lot of people say, oh, well, bare metal is in cloud. Well, yeah, you can still get it in an hour. Maybe it's not 5 minutes. You can get it in an hour, 1 to 4 hours, and it's also pay for what you use. It's also automated. So if you really need performance, you need reliability, and want to save cost, have a look at the bare metal options. So cloud is not just a multi-tenant hypervisor environment. Innovation. This is one of my favorite subjects. So why do we use cloud? You know, where is the market going? Like I said before, you know, instead of taking weeks or months to get some IT environment up and running, now you can do this in a matter of minutes. So by the time I was done with this conversation, you could actually have a cluster up and running with middleware connected to some services, and you could actually start coding. Actually, about half the time I'm talking in this conversation. So really, it's about using cloud to drive innovation. So when we talk about cloud, I want to take it away from just saying, oh, we're talking about infrastructure and we're talking about technology. Let's talk about what cloud actually is and some of the business models around it, and the retooling of how you run your business. So this is actually an IBM software customer. It's Car2Go. Anyone use Car2Go? It's fantastic. We have it in Amsterdam, where I live. And basically, it's A to B location car service. So you sign up, you can go and use the car, you can drive it from point A to point B, and you just leave the car there. So if you think about a car, and it's similar to a cloud environment or a dedicated environment, you might only use your car a few hours per day, but you're paying for it to have it 24 hours. You store it in a garage. So the utilization rate on your machine, being the car, is extremely low. But with a cloud car, as we call it, Car2Go, you can actually just come up, you can use the car, use it from point A to point B, and when you're done, you just leave it there. So the maintenance you don't have to do, the cost you don't have to do, and your utilization rate on this car is almost 100%. So it's thinking about cloud. How do you optimize your assets? How do you get your utilization rates and your return on capital much higher? Netflix. Anyone here use Netflix? Yeah. So this is, you know, they went from this company and they were shipping DVDs through the post. And then they said, hey, there's this fantastic thing called the internet. Why don't we start using that to distribute entertainment? So not only did they say, okay, the internet and technology is an alternative distribution model, but it's also about choice. So I have 2 children, and we don't have a television at home. And it's not that we don't watch things, but we watch Netflix, we watch YouTube. I even use some DVDs sometimes. But then when we go to their grandmother's house and she has a television, my daughter will say, oh, I want to watch this cartoon. And we say, no, you can't watch that. You have to watch what they're giving you, what's on right now. And she says, why? I said, that's a very good question. So, you know, cloud is another way of giving people choice. So it's what you want, when you want it, and then how you want to consume it, how you want to pay for it. But then, again, you can have a subscription. But if I'm done with Netflix, I just cancel it, I turn it off, and I'm done. So again, it's about choice and delivering people what they want when they want it. The other one is communication. So, you know, the days of broadcast are over. Now it's about having a whether it's a digital or a real conversation with people, but it's really about understanding the data. And if you look at what they would call the customer journey in marketing, or even if you say end user, it's all about the data and how people are using different things, when they're using them, how they're using them. Now you can have that data, and even with cognitive, you can predict what people are doing. So this is a slide from marketing and ad technology, which is growing tremendously using data. But if you look at all the different ways you can talk to and reach your customers and then get feedback from them, that's cloud as well. So it's no longer broadcasting, here's the message, it's in the train station. It's more about having one-to-one conversations with people on the scale of billions. So there's a partner company of ours called Struck, and that's what they do is, if you've heard of A/B testing, you say, okay, here a user comes in and I give them 2 options, and then they can decide, and then you have the data to say, okay, this is what they like. Well, what Struck is doing, and they do about 2 billion transactions per day, they do that. It's not A to B testing. They have 200 different messages they can give to an individual user. So taking the data from these customers, they can do a profile, put you in over about 200 different messages, and then give you that message. And then the other thing is this has to be fast. So it all goes into a real-time bidding engine in advertising technology. So what that means is that you have to come in, they have a profile, they match that against a profile, they match it against a brand, they say how much will the brand spend for this person, and then it goes to a real-time bidding engine on Google or another RTB, and then it delivers up a full color message tailored for you in 40 milliseconds. So it does all that in 40 milliseconds. So it's also got to be fast, which is another benefit of cloud. So it's not going to take 2 weeks or even 2 seconds, but 40 milliseconds. So this one is one of my favorites because I've been working in internet technology for about 15 years. When we started, we were building these crazy things called banner ads. You might have seen 1 or 2 of those. Also doing digital printing, but they were more consumer-focused applications. But where I see the next generation, if you look at healthcare, you look at energy, you look at transportation, where the internet is moving, what we call the industrial internet, it's in the 15 trillion, I think, addressable market, so it's massive. And now what you're doing is making people's lives better. You're improving healthcare. It's gone from, I have a fun app where I can tell my friends I'm eating dinner and take a selfie of myself and get a relevant advertising, which is all important and fun, to really improving lives, improving infrastructure, and making it better. And one of the glue of that is cognitive, right? So it's having machines be able to talk to each other. Even with blockchain technology, machines can even do transactions with each other. So it's taking that to the next level to actually improve lives at a deeper level than just entertainment and fun. So there's a ton of opportunity here. So let's talk about business value for a minute. In the end, what are we doing? So I worked at a company called Kodak. Anyone heard of Kodak? Anyone use Kodak products now? So when I joined Kodak, they acquired a web-to-print company we had developed. And when we used to say they don't print pictures, they print money. They were so big, and then there were all these brand tests that they were always in the top 10 worldwide known brands. So no way at that moment would you have predicted that they would go bankrupt. And then when I was at Kodak, we were doing web to print, we were doing digital printing. We actually commercialized some of the first photo books. And then we partnered with a company called Nokia. Anyone heard of Nokia? Similar story to Kodak. Same time, at that same time, they were the market leader by far, not just a little bit, but by far the largest mobile handset manufacturer in the world. And we did a clever little thing where we said, okay, you can take your photos on a high-end Nokia phone, you can share those online, you can make prints from those, we'll do storage and backup. So it was basically take a photo, you could do it with a digital camera as well, share it online with your friends, we'll have a storage offering for you, you can do printing, you can share it mobile to mobile, so very cool stuff. Kodak and Nokia both no longer exist as they once did as the market leaders. Now what's the #1 photo sharing site globally? Facebook, right? And I was at a conference one time and the Facebook speaker went up there and he said, oh yeah, we took Photo, which was a company we sold to Kodak, and we just made it public and added comments and it exploded. And I was like, oh, we've been trying to get that through Kodak for decades. Instagram, right? Taking photos with your mobile, sharing them with friends on a social network. All these things were done, we did it with Nokia and Kodak together. Dropbox. photos. Most of their storage is photos, is what we understand. So if you talk about business value, you went from these market leaders, giant companies, and now altogether, this is almost 400 billion in US dollars. And you might say these valuations are high, but if, Facebook just had their earnings, they're growing, huge amounts. They have 1 billion active users, monthly active users. So they've created real value all in the cloud methodology, right? Fast, agile. Facebook has what they call a hacker culture. So it's don't accept what is today, but keep improving, perpetual improvement. So they took actually products that were already developed in market, and I was personally involved with these things and created companies that are worth billions now by innovating and hacking and taking risks, right? This is another example of creating business value. So WPP is a partner of ours. They're the largest advertising and communications company in the world. And I saw a presentation for him in Germany, and he said, this struck me, he said, half of my revenue today is from products that didn't even exist 15 years ago. So this is a company that's continued to innovate and create business value. And this is at a large scale, right? So, we talked about the cool, trendy Silicon Valley companies and one social network, but he's built a business on digital and digital growth that's in the billions and is global. And if you think about that for a minute and you say, okay, where are we today? If you look at your business, how could you double your business in 10 years, 15 years, 5 years on products that don't even exist or improving existing products? And that's what WPP has done. And if you look at that half of the business that didn't exist 15 years ago, it's all digital. So fun, let's get into the heavy metal, I call it. Let's talk about the real cloud, the infrastructure. We see the business value. And from an IBM point of view, we have 4 guiding principles. One is that you want to have choice with consistency. The other one is it's got to be industrialized, hybrid cloud, DevOps productivity, so creating new things quickly, and then tie it all together, and the glue is all about analytics and using cognitive technologies. So that's the point of view we have on building the cloud. And then let's look at that. So if you look at an environment, you'll have a lot of different runtime and delivery models you'll need. So, for databases, you'll probably want to have bare metal, which is you have root access to a server, specifically which data center that server sits in. So if you have a government client or a bank or a regulated industry, you want to have bare metal access and say, okay, I know where my data sits. I have 100% control over that. It's my server, even though it's in someone else's data center. Virtual machines, VMware, Citrix, KVM with OpenStack, whatever that might be. Virtual machines give you the ability to move and burst, so you can create environments in different locations. That's key as well. And now, what's been moving quicker is now people want to move up the stack, right? So just the VM or just the server is not enough. You want to have the capability to run either the middleware, databases, et cetera, or even the full stack so that you can just start to develop. So, and then if you take that even one step further, that the applications are infrastructure aware. So you're getting to a certain point where now all of a sudden you'll just want to run an application, and the application will actually find the infrastructure. And I had a CIO of a large energy company. She told me, I don't care about the infrastructure. I just need my applications to work. So that's where we're headed. But where we are today is you still need access to the bare metal, because not everything will be application, every application will be infrastructure aware. And with IBM and in the market, you now have that full spectrum. So you can get all those depending on what your needs are and have those in one area, one solution. So this is what the IBM data center footprint looks like. And there's a couple of interesting things here. So there's 40 global cloud data centers. And what we like to say with SoftLayer is you have one data center with 25 locations. And what that means is you log into a portal, and then you can order servers in Singapore, you can have servers in Australia, you can have servers in Amsterdam, and then later this year you'll be able to have infrastructure here in Norway. There's actually a map, I've seen it, but the Norwegian team didn't share it with me yet, but there's a map with the Norwegian SoftLayer data center on here as well. So what that means is you have access to all these data centers, so you can create a global environment from one place. So if you need to extend your data center from here to support international clients or international business units, You can do that without having to, go to Japan and figure out how to set up and get a co-location. You can actually be up and running in Japan in an hour. But also it's bare metal, so you know exactly where that server sits. You can track it, so if an auditor comes in, you can say, this is where the server sits. I know it's in Tokyo. And if you really want to do an audit, you can say it's in row 297, server 18. It's that level of detail. Even with Intel, you can go right down to the chip level and create what they call a chain of trust. So these are the only people that can access that server, and if someone else does, it shuts down the machine. So it's that level of control, not just a public cloud where you say, okay, it's in an availability zone, and then the cloud provider can move it around or not move it around as needed. So you get that level of control, that level of security, and more importantly, that level of compliance. So that's the other trend we see is compliance getting more and more strict. There's a lot of discussion. We work with the European Union on cloud strategy for Europe, and then the European Union says, okay, we want to have a digital Europe, but the reality is our customers are saying, nope, I want to know where my data sits. I want to have full control over that. So there is some stuff about a digital Europe, and people don't care where the data sits, but what the customers and the market is telling us is exactly the opposite. Nope, we want to know where the data is, and we want to have control over it. So that's what the future is going to be: highly controlled, highly transparent, and highly compliant. And without going into the boring details, but don't forget about the network, right? People talk about infrastructure as a service, they talk about cloud, but if you're talking about compliance or high performance workloads, the network is important. So there's public network, private network, out-of-band management. So think about that when you're designing your network. And then often we can go back to the costs, oftentimes people will spend more for their networking than they will for the actual hosting. And with cloud, you can get those all together. It's combined. So industrialized hybrid cloud. So this woman looks a lot like our compliance officer. Don't come into the data center. So industrialized hybrid cloud is really, when we talk about the different runtimes and the different needs of applications, there is no one application or one way to do that. So you can't just say, okay, I run everything in public cloud, or I run everything on premise. That's not the model. Like I talked about before with zCloud, what you want to be able to do is say, I have an environment where I can optimize my environment, and then I can burst into other public clouds and other private clouds, but have that all tied together, right? So if you're not orchestrating that, then you get back to the application model, the explosion of the universe where you have applications everywhere, but they're not cohesive, they're not governed. So it's really about tying those all together and integrating those. Then the other one is visibility and control. So one of the conversations that we always have is, great, I want to give my teams the ability to deploy applications, to have servers, have them up and running in a matter of minutes. Great, I want that functionality, but I want to control it, because they do an audit and they see a lot of what they call shadow IT. And I actually don't like the term shadow IT because it's real IT and it's something like 40% of the spend. But what they say is we want to be able to have visibility and control that. So we want to have the governance to be able to say, okay, here's how much you spend. And then, by the way, when you're not using that, please turn that off. Because what we see, and then you see the 30% waste of servers, is people will get environments, they'll be up and running, and then they'll just leave them there. Because it's easier to leave it running and just have it available as opposed to turning it off. So getting that visibility and control is important without enabling people to build things quickly. The other one is security. So again, I've been doing cloud a long time, and when we were first selling cloud into the market, the first question people have was security. So we listened, we went back, we partnered with Intel to get processor level security. So you can actually, like I mentioned, have a line of trust that goes right down in the processor of the machine. And then if that line of trust is broken, it'll turn off the machine. So getting that level of security and compliance is very important, and getting more and more important. And then the other thing that is, we've been listening, because security was always a big barrier for cloud adoption. So we listened and developed, and now you had things like the Sony hacking, arguably, depending on the data center, that the cloud is more secure than a lot of on-premise environments. And I made a joke about the compliance officer in that picture before, but it's true. I mean, my compliance officer she's very strict. So it's, in fact, I built the data center in Amsterdam because I was one of the first European employees Now I can't even go into the data center. I can't even go into the building unless I get a pass from somebody. So it's that level of security. And arguably, and I've been into some other data centers, the cloud can actually be more secure than an on-premise environment. So DevOps, I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but again, it's giving the developers the stack, the technology stack, and the tools to be able to do what they do best and develop. So has anyone used Parse? It's it was, Facebook actually just turned it off because incidentally it wasn't free, right? It was using a lot of their equipment. But Parse, basically, they solved a lot of the back-end infrastructure, networking things for you. So and I'll quote one of our business partners who was using Parse. He said, wow, now I have to find another solution because now that I have to think about the back-end instead of just going and coding and writing code. And we said, no, actually you don't, but because you can do that on Bluemix. But that's the mentality, right? So for DevOps and doing development, they don't care. They don't want to know about the infrastructure. The infrastructure is important, but let us take care of that. You just focus on the DevOps and then start coding, start building. Portability. So that's another requirement. And one of the issues where you get utilization rates is people build full stacks. And they say, okay, this stack has to sit in this data center or this specific database and this specific storage. But in the cloud world, you want to build towards portability so that, almost that your application is agnostic to the infrastructure underneath. And you say, okay, I just need to have an application that I can move across different workloads, whether it's on-premises, off-premises, or in a public cloud. So it's getting that portability. And in the end, it's all about the data, right? So starting to use that data, start managing that data, and then start building intelligence from the data. Then the last one is, in this section, is openness. So anyone here use OpenStack? So on the IBM cloud and with SoftLayer Cloud, we've always been technology agnostic, meaning we want to find the right technology for the right need. We see OpenStack and open power systems getting a lot of traction. So people are starting to say, okay, I'm going into the cloud, but I don't want to have a technology hook. I want to have the ability to move things around. So what we've done is build something that's open by design. So on SoftLayer, IBM, you can go in, you can run any hypervisor you want. You can even get access to a bare metal with no operating system, so you can install your own. So it's really building these open clouds. Anyone in here using Docker? So that's another movement we see in the marketplace is going and say, I have these containers. They're open sourced, and also using Cloud Foundry, where again, they say they're open. You can develop them how you use them, give them back to the community. But the idea is that gives you the ability to move it around. You don't have any vendor lock-in. You can use the different applications. And then the other part about OpenStack is it's open source. IBM has about 400 developers working on it. Then it's open in the community. So when you open up the open source, you instead of having one team of developers building something or that's locked into a specific requirement, you have a whole community enhancing this product to make it better. So if you look at the hypervisor on OpenStack, it's way more efficient than most of the hypervisors in the market. So it's highly efficient and it's open. So if you want, you can even adjust it to your own needs. So that reminds me, red card, anyone? Still okay? Okay. So DevOps. This is all about productivity. This is all about bringing things to market faster, getting things up and running. And like I mentioned before, people don't care about the infrastructure, right? We care about the infrastructure because that's what we run. But your developers and even some of the other people don't care about that. They would need to deliver products, and they need to deliver them quickly. So that's what Bluemix, Urban Code, some of the other products we have in IBM, they give you those tools to deploy, operate, and steer. So the development is one. So you have people in a lab or in your development team building code, but then the next step is, I need to get that into production. And then it needs to scale. So that's all about the portability, taking the tools and the tooling to say, okay, I need to create something, and then I need to run it, and then I need to scale it. And that's the pattern for the cloud, right? So it's not just the development. Don't just develop in a public cloud and then, whoa, how do we get that into production? And then how do we scale it? It's about integrating that whole workflow across a different tool set. And then again, giving you the most choices. So not every application is the same. Not every industry is the same. Banking, financial services, healthcare, they have different requirements than a web application. So it's having that tool set to give you the choices and be able to produce and migrate across different locations. So the last one, and when they look and say, okay, where is the world headed? It's all about intelligence, right? I stay away from the word analytics or stay in the word from data-driven. Those are all true, right? It is analytics and it is data-driven. But why do we do those things with analytics? It's almost like the marketing technology is we want to have business intelligence. We want to have machines talking to each other. We want to have people talking to each other. But it's not one size fits all. If I want to have a conversation, I can use hundreds of thousands, millions, even billions of data points so that I know the conversation I have with you is what you want to talk about. My wife, I should probably bring this home with me, right? So when we have a conversation, it's really what she wants to talk about. But it's the cognitive era, right? So my first slide was bringing all these things together. So we talked about the applications here, the infrastructure there, the public cloud, the different services, but pulling that all together to do cognitive and actually learn from that is where we see the future of cloud. So again, just to summarize the guiding principles we have. One is choice with consistency. So you want to be able to move workloads based on your needs, where you want them, when you want them. And then, by the way, it's cloud, so only pay for what you use. DevOps productivity, that's creating products, launching products, and then running and scaling those products, being able to do that with a consistent set of tools, quickly, easy. And again, it's cloud, pay for what you use. Industrialized hybrid cloud, so pulling all the pieces together, and then underneath having the analytics and data for those. So quickly, and I don't think I'll take up the whole hour, so you'll get some time back. And actually, those muffins they have on the other side of the building are delicious. This is where we see a lot of, I think the banking industry is a good example of this. In Boursorama Bank, which is a subsidiary of Société Générale, the French bank, they're a partner of ours, and we're building all these things for them now. So it's launching in the cloud, and they're an online bank that's part of a major bank, and they're set to triple their user growth. So conservative people say banking is boring. I used to work in banking. Well, this company is actually growing, and they're set to triple in the next 5 years. They're doing online banking, but it goes to a hybrid cloud. So you have all your back-end banking applications running in an on-premises environment. So, mainframes, et cetera, they're still there. They're still quite big and robust. There's no reason to move off of those. But if you look at banking, most of the transactions, whether it's commercial banking, investment banking, it's happening on mobile and web. So they have to merge these two worlds together where their interaction, customer support, mobile banking, is all happening in the systems of engagement, mobile and web, but all their legacy systems and secure systems are running in a on-premises environment. And there's no investment model that says we need to move those, but they need to tie all those together. So they have the on-premises, and then that's extending into an off-premises private cloud on SoftLayer. So they extended their network into our data center. So it's a private network, not on the public internet. And then they have dedicated bare metal, so they know exactly. So if the French auditor comes in, they say it's in Montpellier, row 297, servers 18 through 84. Those aren't the exact numbers, but they have that level of audibility with their auditors. And then for some of the flexible stuff, so people come in and they check their balance on their bank account once a month, they can flex that up on web servers, on virtual servers. So they've built this hybrid cloud where they can pull the two environments together. We see that in banking, we see that in travel. More and more environments are going where the interaction happens online, but you have these core legacy systems that have been around forever, and there's no investment model to upgrade or move those. So that's the world. And then, of course, they're an online bank, so they're using a lot of the analytics and cognitive ability to say, this is what I understand about my customers, this is the profile, how can we grow that customer base and sell more to the existing customer base? And then even things, if you come into their customer support, they'll know who you are and probably what your question is before you get there. So talk about a nice customer experience where, it's like going to the market where the guy at the market knows you and says, oh yeah, I know you like these muffins, I made a fresh batch for you. So it's that level of cognitive ability So they've actually built one of these, and we're developing that now. So that's the model. That's how we see it working. And then my question is, will you disrupt or be disrupted? And what's your strategy? Anyone have any questions, thoughts? Red card? Okay, great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.